Hey friends, today we are planting some sweet corn seeds and I'm going to give you a little gardening 101 lesson. If you've never planted seeds before, or if you just need a refresher, or you've been trying to wing it but no one ever really taught you how to do it, I'm going to show you how to direct sow your seeds into the ground. And there are some crops that are better suited to direct sow than others. Today we are planting sweet corn. This is one of the very few seeds that I buy as a hybrid. Most of my seeds I get heirloom varieties because I like to save my seeds, to save money. But the sweet corn, I have found the heirloom ones just don't compare to this flavor. I get the natural sweet hybrid. It's a bicolor corn and it's from Johnny's Seeds. They're not sponsoring the video. This is not a sponsored product, but I'm just letting you know what I use. We've tried a bunch of different kinds and this has been our absolute favorite. So this is my go-to for sweet corn. And I'm gonna show you a couple different ways that you can do this. So first of all, if you're starting with ground like mine, I'm in Pennsylvania, so the weeds start growing about March. That's when they start coming up. But you don't plant, our last frost date is like halfway through May, so you don't want to put your seeds in until then. So you have 2 months of weeds growing before you even get started sowing. So I didn't film it, but I did pull the weeds out of this section first. So I went through and pulled all those weeds. Once you get the weeds out of the way, there's a couple ways you can do this. So for me, I like to loosen up a large area of soil if I'm planting seeds that get planted closely together. So here's what I'll do. Take my big old shovel, dig it into the ground, get a nice big scoop. I take that scoop, flip it over, and break it up with the shovel. And I might do that a couple times depending on how hard the ground is or how tightly the soil's packed together. But you want the soil to be loose in small little crumbles. And here's the reason why. When you're planting a seed, you need to make sure it doesn't have any air pockets there, because the seed needs to be in contact with the soil in order to germinate. If it's sitting in an air pocket or it has a bunch of air around it where it's not really touching the soil, it's not going to germinate. So the reason you want that small crumb is so you can then pack it around the seed, make sure it's touching the seed on all sides. You'll get much better germination that way. So like I said, if I'm planting seeds that go really close together, I will do this all the way down the whole row. I'll do every inch of the row just like that. Corn, however, you plant about 1 foot apart. So I'm not gonna bother doing all of the space, because in a garden this size, my garden's about 30,000 square feet. So I can't be perfect. This is not a Pinterest perfect garden. You'll see I left some of the smaller weeds in the ground because I'm just not gonna take the time to pull them, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be beautiful, just has to be functional. And honestly, those smaller weeds, they'll help to mulch the soil and keep the moisture in and shade the plants, and it's fine. If they get too big, I'll pull them. But for now, I'm not worried about it. So anyways, for now, what I'm gonna do is just once every foot or so where I'm planting the corn, I'm just gonna do a small section of soil, breaking it up like that, because I'm not gonna waste my time breaking up the soil in between where I'm not planting anything. So if you don't have a big shovel like this, you can use a smaller trowel. That'll work too. You just have to push harder. It's a little bit of extra effort to do that. You have to get a little bit more leverage if your soil's really hard. But if you have loose soil, this will work just fine. You don't even need to mess with a big shovel. So anyways, I'll move the camera around so you can see what I'm doing when I plant this. Okay, so what I do is I just use my fingers. You can wear gloves if you want, but I don't bother. I just use my fingers and make little holes according to the spacing for each plant. So for sweet corn, I plant them about 1 foot apart. So I just estimate, I'm not getting a ruler out. I mean, it's not an exact science. If they're a little bit farther, a little bit closer, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. So don't worry about it too much. But I just estimate about 1 foot apart, just make a little divot with my fingers so that I can visually see where all the seeds are going. And I'm making 2 rows here in this section. So I put the second row in between the spaces of the first row just to give them a little bit more space to grow. And just gonna make my holes here, one here, and one more there. And then what I do is I grab the seeds. Now, also don't do what I did. It rained all day yesterday and all night, and I accidentally set my seed packet down in a puddle. Don't do that, guys. Don't get your seeds wet. That's not good. If you do get them wet, make sure you plant them. Don't put them back into storage after they're wet, because you don't want moisture in there. They'll just go bad. So yeah, don't put them down in a mud puddle. But I'm gonna start with the leftovers from last year. Oops. So I have my corn seeds here. I'm just gonna put one seed in each hole. So for me, because I try to grow as much of our own food as possible, I really want to get the most bang for my buck every year. And because of that, I do keep records of what I planted, how it did, and all that kind of stuff. So when I plant them, I count them as I'm putting them in. So I know exactly how many I planted. Then I can see how many of those seeds germinated. Was it enough food for us for the year, and things like that. So when I make my holes, I make them 10 at a time. And in this case, I did 20 because it's 2 rows. So that way I can keep count a little bit easier. So once your seed is in the hole, all you're gonna do is just push this dirt back on top of it. Now, if you have big clumps like this, what I do is just break it up with my fingers and sprinkle it on top. You wanna get any like big debris out of the way. If there are rocks or sticks, just move those out of there. Again, you want really good soil contact with your seed. So you want nice loose soil, and then I pack it down. You don't wanna like stomp on it with all your weight, pack it down, but you want no air gaps, no pockets. So you pack it down with your fingers, and same thing in all these holes. Now, as far as the depth goes, I tend to plant my seeds a little bit deeper than what it says, just because I know if we get a hard rain, some of that soil is gonna wash off, and I don't want them to be too shallow where they're gonna dry out and have shallow roots and things like that. So I do plant them a little bit deeper. I mean, obviously you don't wanna go like a foot into the ground or they won't germinate, but I do go slightly deeper than what the package says. So that's what I do, that's how I put them in. Once they're in the ground, if it's not gonna rain, you do wanna water them in. And again, that helps to make sure there are no air bubbles in the bottom, and just helps them to get established and start to germinate, because they do need that moisture to germinate as well. So a couple little tips, if you wanna save time in the garden, plant right before a rain, and do your weeding right after a rain, because weeding is so much easier when the ground is saturated. The weeds pull right out. You have to use very little effort. They come right out after a really hard rain. So I try to do my weeding right after a rain and plant just before a rain, just to save me the time of doing the extra step of watering it in. But anyways, that's how we do it. Oh, and by the way, with sweet corn, the reason you want to do it in rows that are kind of close together, I'm getting attacked by ants right now, sorry. But the reason you want to do it in rows that are close together is because corn is wind pollinated. So you don't want to do one big long row of corn. You want to do it more of like a square, or have multiple rows next to each other. And I'm gonna, after I finish this row, I'm also gonna do the row behind me too, which is about 5 feet away from this one. And I'm gonna do 2 rows down there. But corn is pollinated by wind, so you'll get much better fruiting of it if it's in like more of a square shape where it's in multiple rows. So like I told you before, I was doing some weeding before I started filming. So I just ripped these weeds out and threw them on the plastic here. Once they're on the plastic in the hot sun for a day or two, they'll just shrivel up and dry out. And at that point, you can even just throw them back on as mulch if you want to, or you can scoop them up and throw them somewhere else. But I did leave a couple things. Like I said, I left a lot of these little weeds. They'll just act as mulch, and once they get bigger, I can pull them out if they're a problem. But I did come across some blackberries. I have a bunch of wild blackberries growing around here, and I decided to just leave these here because my husband and I love blackberries, and it's at the end of the row, so it's kind of out of the way anyway. But I found a ton of those. I actually have some There's some back here and this little pile of weeds. They grew all through this section, like all over the grass here, which is kind of why I didn't cover this up, because I want the blackberries. But I also have some in this row too, and I'm probably going to try to leave the blackberries in there and they can just grow in between the sweet corn, because again, I'm not going for Pinterest perfect. I'm going for food production here, and I think they'll be fine. They're not gonna take too much nutrients away from the corn or anything, and then we'll have extra blackberries. So again, you pardon my rooster there. He likes to make himself very vocally known. But what was I even talking about? Oh, right. Okay, so again, you don't need to have a Pinterest perfect, weed-free, perfectly manicured garden in order to grow a lot of food. I have never had a garden like that, and I've always been able to grow tons and tons of food, like hundreds of pounds of food every year. So you, again, don't strive for perfection. Just make sure that your plants can breathe, that they have a little space. Let me show you an example of that actually down here. So this jumbled mess that looks like it's just completely unkempt, this is herbs and rhubarb. So I did try to come down here and weed a little bit a week or two ago. But here's the thing, like, I'm not gonna pull every single blade of grass out of this hillside. It would just not be practical. And anyways, I have, this I believe is my winter savory. It is growing in the midst of all of these weeds. All I did when I came down here to weed was I just came in, I pulled all of the really big weeds that were right around it. I pulled those out of the way, made sure that there was nothing blocking the sunshine from getting to the plants, and I just basically gave it a little bit of a ring of breathing room right around it. The rest of this stuff, yeah, it looks gnarly, but I don't have time to pick every single blade of grass, like I said, or every single weed. I have food to plant, okay? So all I need to do, I call it a rescue mission. You don't need to make it perfect. You just need to rescue your plants. So if they're getting crowded out, give them some space, like give them some breathing room, make sure they can get sunlight, water, and they don't have anything right up against them competing with their root system. If you can do that, don't worry about the rest of the weeds, honestly. You will have plenty of other weeds to pull. So that's my tip for you when you're, when you have an area that's just out of control. Again, don't try to make it perfect. Just rescue your plants, make sure they can breathe, and everything will be fine. I have harvested so much food out of the most weedy areas of my garden. You would be amazed. So really, again, I know I've said this like 4,000 times during this video, but you do not have to be perfect. Nothing in your garden needs to be perfect in order to grow food. I promise you. If it did, I would have never grown anything. Another thing you want to remember to do too after you plant your seeds is you want to put down some mulch on top of them. You don't want to cover them super deep to the point that they can't get any sunshine or anything like that, but just like about like this, where you're laying down either straw, wood chips, you can use grass clippings, you can use dead leaves. I'm sorry, my rooster is so loud. But anything like that you can use as mulch, but you don't want to leave the soil bare, because number one, it will dry out, and the sun baking it like that will deplete it of nutrients. And number two, you need to make sure that your seeds, and after they germinate, your young tender plants need to have constant moisture in order to thrive. And so, my goodness, that rooster. I'm sorry. So anyways, you do want to put down some mulch, and I don't have any down in the other area. That's why I'm just showing you around my strawberries. But while we're at the strawberries, check this out. I'm excited. I can't wait for these guys to ripen. We got a bunch of green ones growing. So the other little funny story, this is just a little side note, but whenever I'm out here pulling weeds, my chickens will all like run. They'll all run up to the corner of the fence, the closest place they can get to me, and they'll stand there and just watch me and beg for weeds. Like, they want to eat the weeds after I pull them. So it's really funny. Like, watch this. I'll pull one. All right, we got a weed right here. You chickies want some green stuff? Come here, babies. You want some green stuff? There you go. And then the pile on begins. So hey, if you have chickens, it's a great way to get rid of weeds. It's very efficient. And then they turn it into fertilizer. So anyways, just thought I'd share that with you. But I hope you guys found this video helpful, and I hope that you are motivated to give this a try and maybe just plant a couple seeds, maybe right around your house, in your front yard, backyard, somewhere. Just take a tiny little plot of land, throw 5 seeds in and see what happens. Just give it a try. I think you will fall in love with gardening the way that I did. So anyways, have a great day, guys. I will see you in my next video. Bye-bye.